Okay, welcome back to another episode in my kitchen. As I always like to say, we're going to cook something amazing today, and I think we truly are. We're going to cook, I don't know whether it's the king of curries, but it's most certainly the prince of curries, a very popular standard restaurant curry throughout the world. We're going to be cooking MADRAS, but we're going to be doing it different. We're going to be doing it authentic, so no base gravy. We're going to do everything from scratch, including the MADRAS curry powder that I made. I'll put a link as I'm announcing that on the video so you can see how that's made. It tastes amazing. So, let's start with the ingredients. Let's start on the bottom left. Right, we have quite a large Spanish onion, very, very finely chopped. We have some tomato paste with some of the reddest tomatoes I can find. There's a couple of cherry tomatoes, very red, very ripe. We have some regular tomatoes, again very ripe and red. We also have half a red pepper in there, and we've blended it into a fine paste. I didn't use water or tandoori masala. So we have a good amount of tomato paste there. We have some prawns. Yeah, I'm sure that anybody tunes in regularly to the videos is getting quite familiar with my prawn recipes. Obviously, substitute the prawns for something else. If you'd like lamb in this, use lamb. If you'd like chicken, and you know, as most British Indian restaurants and other restaurants around the world actually, they use everything pre-cooked. With this recipe, you could actually cook the meat in the curry. It'll be the most flavourful and more authentic Indian style. Here we have some, on the top right, we have some natural yogurt that has a little bit of water added, so when I do add it to the final stages of the dish later, it doesn't curdle, so adding a little bit of water is really helpful. We have about 5 very finely chopped, with scissors, green chilies. We have about 2/3 of a teaspoon of Kashmiri chili powder. We have a pinch of turmeric. We have a couple of dried curry leaves. I was looking for fresh. I really wanted to use fresh in this recipe, but I went to 3 Asian stores down the road, and it just seems there's a drought on fresh curry leaves at the moment. So you obviously use fresh if you can get them. The taste of fresh curry leaves is so much better. Next to that we have a little bit, I'd say about half a tablespoon of grated coconut cream. Obviously you can substitute that for coconut milk, you know, any type of coconut. If you're going to use desiccated, it finds to be a bit grainy, use coconut flour. Next to that we have quite a generous heaped tablespoon of ginger and garlic paste. We have a teaspoon of jaggery, which is unrefined cane sugar. We have about 2/3 of a teaspoon of salt, and last but not least we have a little bowl here. The coriander I'm going to use for garnish. The 2 pieces of tomato will be added to the dish later. We have chili for garnish. We're going to use the juice of a whole lime, and we have a knob of butter that is going to be added to the final stages, and obviously our MADRAS curry powder. So what is a MADRAS? How can it be defined? Are there any rules? So many people cooking it in so many different parts of the world. Opinions vary, chefs cook different recipes, but I would define a MADRAS as something using, you know, this is an authentic MADRAS curry powder. You, obviously, if you're not too ambitious at home, you can substitute that for mild MADRAS that you can find in the shop, powder in powdered form. But I would say a MADRAS is fairly hot. It's about jalfrezi heat, if not a little bit hotter if you like it a bit more spicier. It's quite tomatoey, it's quite oily, and yeah, it's quite a simple recipe. Well, I think so. Let's see. Okay, let's get cooking. So I've just heated about 3 tablespoons of oil into a frying pan, and first of all we're going to add the onions. You might be alarmed at how many onions I'm using. That's just one large, I'd say just over a cricket ball in size onion, but that will reduce. We're going to cook, this is a really important part, we're going to cook the onions down. And when you're frying onions on quite a high heat, you have to cut them all the same size. So what's going to happen, the smaller ones are going to cook first and the larger ones aren't going to cook unless you're going to burn the small ones. So it's important to really finely slice your onions for a sauce like this, all the same size, as uniform as possible. Take your time, try and enjoy it as much as you can without crying. So what I'm going to do is we're going to come back to that. I want to brown those onions, so we'll come back to that in a good 5 minutes. Okay, those onions are exactly how I want. I underestimated the time a little bit. I never time anything, I always go by eye. They're turning a nice golden brown colour, just the way I want them. They've reduced a great deal. So now it's time to add the ginger and garlic paste. Give it a good stir. Smelling good. Next I'm going to add the curry leaves. And the tomato paste. Tomato and red pepper actually. Okay, give that a good stir. So all those ingredients are well combined, it's on a high heat. I want to reduce some of that tomato paste, get some of the water content out, get some of those raw flavours out. I'm going to add my salt, about 2/3 of a teaspoon. This will be enough for about 2 or 3 people depending on how big your appetite. Next goes in the Kashmiri chili powder and the turmeric. Again, we're going to give that a good stir. And finally, we're going to add 2 teaspoons of that wonderful Madras curry powder I made earlier. You don't need to use too much, it's quite pungent. Give that a stir once again. Next we're going to add the jaggery. It'll add a nice sweet flavour to the dish, and it will go well with the coconut and the yogurt, getting quite an exotic flavour there, something a little bit different to your standard Madras. Okay, make sure that sugar's dissolved. The green chilies, obviously adapt the amount of chilies you use according to your tastes. I like mine quite spicy. So great, we're getting some oil around the edges, which shows the tomatoes have reduced their water content, and we're going to let that simmer for a moment and we're going to come back to it. So that's been simmering now. I have bubbles right throughout the dish, which is a good sign, for about a minute. Next we're going to add the yogurt. and the coconut cream. Give that a good stir. And some great colours there. You see the yoghurt is a real colour changer. I'm just going to let that simmer a little bit. Let's add the tomatoes. And we'll come back to that in about 1 minute. So that's been simmering now for 1 minute. The oil is starting to split. That's exactly how I want it. And I'm going to add the prawns. One thing I didn't mention about the prawns earlier, I always marinate prawns with a little bit of salt and a little bit of turmeric and some lemon juice. And just let it sit there for an hour or so. It doesn't make a big difference, but yeah, every little helps. Okay, so let's heat that back up. I'm just going to bring that to a boil now and we'll come back to it shortly. So those prawns have been cooking about 2 minutes. You don't want to cook prawns for too long. Let's add the lime juice. Excuse my fingers. These are seedless limes, but to be honest, I don't mind lime or lemon seeds in my food. So let's give that a stir. Bring that to the boil. And then we're going to add our knob of butter. Not too much. Melt that in for added flavour and sheen, really. So what I'll do at this point is just evaporate in the boiling process any liquid we have in there, get rid of some of that, and we're going to boil that gently now until the oil starts to split again and it's ready to serve. So nearly ready to serve now. What I'll do is get a spoon, all that caramelisation around the pan, back into the dish. Right, ready to serve. So I was quite really excited to cook this recipe today. It's pretty exotic. I even bought myself a new bowl, all free. So let's serve. So finally some garnish. And the green chilli. So there you have it. Authentic, home-style prawn madras. Feel free to subscribe, like, share, much appreciated. I hope you've enjoyed the video.